So I'm Mark Christopher, and I'm an alcoholic. I was sitting over there, I was nervous. I was wondering to myself, I wonder why I'm so nervous. And then it dawned on me I'm an alcoholic. That's a pretty good joke. Okay, so I'm going to try to share my experience, strength, and hope tonight in life and with Alcoholics Anonymous. And a long time ago, meaning 10 or 11 years ago, I was getting ready to tell my story, and I was nervous, and I called Harold and told him how nervous I was, and he said, just try to share some hope. That's all you gotta do. Just remember to share some hope. So that's what I'm gonna try to do tonight. Start with a few things. My sobriety date is 6/24/2011. And there's another date that I'd like to talk about. It's 7/11/2011. The sobriety date is the first day that I didn't use any chemical. And the second date, I call it my awake date. I was in treatment and I woke up. I just kind of snapped out of it. I don't know of another word. I kind of came to and realized what was going on in my life and wanted something different. I believe I took a third step on that day. I decided I was going to do whatever I was told to do to the best of my ability, and I've done that. And as a result of that, I have a great life. I've had the best just over 12 years of my life. I'm 57. I just turned 57. Just had a birthday, September 18th. And I've had a lot of years before sobriety and a few years now in sobriety. And I can tell you, honestly, I told Ronnie, I said, I was walked by John, he said, tell the truth. And I went by Roddy. Roddy said, tell the truth. I said, I must have had a lie on the tip of my tongue or something. Everybody tell me to tell the truth. So I'm going to tell you the truth. I've had the best just over 12 years of my entire life. I've done a lot of things before recovery, and not, a lot of things people would think were a big deal. Traveled around the world, ran plants, made a lot of money, but nothing compares to the years I've had in sobriety. And that's the hope I have for somebody. If you want the best years of your life, I believe they start right here in this building, because mine did. So I was born, it's a home group thing. This is my home. The Wilder Building's my home. I never really understood the home group when I first came in. I just kind of joined the Wilder Building. I did the morning meeting every day of my life for about 2 years and did a lot of nighttime meetings. A lot of people see me here, Chuck, Richard, Frank, John, and then as people came in, just like the big books it's never lied to me. It said I'd have a fellowship grow about me, so I had all these guys I kind of come into that were here to guide me along and still do and show me the right way to do things, and sometimes what I shouldn't do. But then the fellowship grew up around me, and I can tell you the best friends in my life are in this room tonight. And some of them were here before I got here, and some of them had come in way after I got here. I'm grateful for all the friends and the guidance I have in Alcoholics Anonymous. I grew up in Aberdeen, North Carolina. I was born over in Pinehurst at the hospital there, but I grew up behind Poplar Street over on Crest Drive, maybe 4 or 5 miles from here. I had 3 brothers. My mom was a very spiritual lady. She was what I would refer to as a true believer. She knew God, and she turned towards God and used God on a daily basis. I didn't realize it until I got here, but I was more of an agnostic. I believed in something, but I would doubt it all the time and wasn't sure how to tap into it or use it. My mom had there was 4 of us, 4 boys, and we were kind of rough like boys can be, you know. And my dad was the fifth boy, and he was just bad. Maybe worse, I don't know, but I do know this. My mom had a tough life. You know, things I used to see as maybe the absence of God. Like when my dad would do what he did to my mom on a lot of occasions, not bring home a paycheck or verbally abuse her, or he'd go off on just brainstorm, what a big book called Brainstorms, rages. He'd tear the curtains off the wall, flip the furniture over. And hey, he was a good man, did the best he could, I believe. He just didn't know what's the matter with him. And boy, I'm glad I get to know what's the matter with me. And not only that, I know what to do about it. But I can remember my mom wondering how she's going to feed four boys, and how she's going to make it. And I used to, I started to doubt God early on because I'd see my mom pray a lot, and she'd take us down here to the Methodist Church in Middle Aberdeen every Sunday, and then I'd see my dad doing what he was doing, and I'd think, where's God now? She's been doing all this praying and all this singing. Where's he at right now? As a result of, I believe, recovery and starting to see things from a different perspective, is what I realize now is there ain't no way my mama could have raised four boys in that environment without God. What I used to see as the absence of God was absolutely the presence of God in our life. So with that, I will tell you this. The reason I started with that nervous thing, sometimes I tell my story, and I can go all the way back to fourth grade when I was I went to fourth grade, I was in Berkeley, little elementary school over here in Aberdeen. Used to be the elementary school, and I remember vividly sitting in a classroom looking out a window across the old playground and thinking to myself, I wonder what's the matter with me. Why am I so nervous? And that was a thought I had a lot as a child and on up through life. I've heard a lot of people stand up here and say it. It's almost like everybody else knew what to do. I wasn't quite sure what to do. I'd look down the hallway, everybody be going to class, and I'm afraid I'm going to get in the wrong place or get on the wrong school bus. And a lot of times, sometimes I did, but I remember thinking to myself, wonder why am I so nervous? And the reason I say that is, I don't know, I think a lot of people can identify with that, I believe. There's just a general nervousness about life and succeeding and being able to make it and knowing what to do. And it kind of dogged me my whole life, and I think in some cases it drove me to work really hard and do really good, but in other times it drove me to numb it. Anyway, I can still get like that. So here's what happened. I went to school. My house was chaos a lot of times. I remember thinking, my mom was a really good lady. She fed us, man. She cooked good stuff for us. She just took care of us. She prayed all the time, got to church. My daddy just kind of marched to a different tune. He just didn't do that. In the end of my using the things that I loathed the most about my father and his actions, I was duplicating a lot of them. I was doing the same things to my wife and my family. I had a nice house. I still do. I wouldn't have it if it weren't for my wife. The big book says that too. So if it weren't for our wives, we wouldn't have much. I would have sold everything my name was on. If she hadn't had her name on some stuff, I wouldn't have nothing. I'd have sold it every bit right out from underneath my family. But I remember. So I'd think I was a good daddy because I provided a decent house, a couple of four-wheelers, a pool out behind the house, nice clothes for them to go to school in and everything. But they'd be outside the house crying because of the way me and their mom inside screaming at each other. I remember standing in that house yelling across the bar at my wife, "But you're the problem. I'm the same person you met." And she spit it right back at me. She said, "You're right. You are. I had to grow up and raise some kids, and you didn't grow up." In one of those arguments, I had a moment where I said some things that were pretty rough, and I realized she don't cry no more. She's done. I could say whatever I wanted to say, as cruel and as hard as I wanted to say it. She wouldn't cry anymore. I started, a lot of stuff in my story besides alcohol. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but you'll know. But it started with alcohol, and it ended with alcohol. And a lot of stuff went on in the middle. And the first time I ever really felt the effects of alcohol, when I knew it was the alcohol, was when I drank a couple of tall boys down at Atlantic Beach, North Carolina. And I forced them down. I didn't like the taste of them. Never have. Never. In the end, I did. I acquired a taste for it, but early on, I didn't like it. But when I forced them down, I felt that feeling. I call it the warm blanket. I'm not sure I thought it was going to solve all my problems, but I knew this. I liked the way it felt, and I was going to feel it a lot more. And I did. So I started drinking, smoking some marijuana, and things progressed. I was a blackout drinker early on. Sit down and I remember drinking liquor. We'd tell my parents that we were going to the movies, and we'd sneak off, get somebody to buy us some alcohol, and we'd sneak off in the woods and drink it. Me and a couple of buddies. And I remember being out in the woods with a bottle of Evan Williams Green Label. Yeah. And that good stuff. But I remember I'd have to take a little Coke and put it in my mouth, and then a little bit of liquor, and then chase it with Coke because I hated it so bad. But I just wanted to get it in my gut just so I could feel the feeling. I always drank for effect. Never for fun, just effect. Give me the effect, never for taste. Just it went on like that, but it got to where, by the end of when I was drinking, I don't spend too much time in it. I was just drinking where a lot of people wouldn't know. I think I ended up there anyway. It was just white liquor, just vodka. Give me vodka and a twist. Just give me that. No mess. Don't bother with a mix or any of that. And then about 12 years before I came in here, I'd had a DWI. I got it. This little service road right down here at the stop sign. If you take a right and go all the way out till you go to US 1, I got it right there at that stop sign. It was the night I turned 21. I turned 21 at midnight at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was getting a DWI. He didn't say happy birthday. But I knew, I remember going to the school back then when they'd send you to school, and there was the lady that it was called an ADETS back then. You go on Saturday morning, you had to blow, and they'd teach you stuff. But I remember the lady said in there, she said 2 out of 3 of you are going to get another DWI. I remember thinking, not me. Not much as this costs, I ain't got my license, And here's what I didn't understand. It's just like the stories in the big book, and I think it's Fred's story where I didn't realize I didn't have a choice in it. I didn't understand. I said, no, not me, because I ain't never going to drink and drive again. It wasn't my choice. I ended up drinking and driving again. I did stop drinking, though. I started doing quite a bit of cocaine, and I stopped drinking when I found opiates. I had a buddy that, y'all seen all the movies and everything, and I'm right out of one of them shows, like a guy come up with some OCs, and I started doing those, and one thing led to another, and it took off from there. And for about 8 years. I used to run a plant over here. Made a lot of money, put some money in the 401, thought I had a pretty good thing going, young dude, get a lot going, house, all that, and I lost it all, really, is what it come down to. Like I said, I wouldn't have the house if it weren't for the wife, but I couldn't go there in the end. When I look back at it, it's just incredible how fast you can go through a whole career of earnings when you're in active addiction and alcoholism. For me, I lost the job. They put up with me as long as they could. I was good at the job, and they even told me that when they got rid of me. They just said, "Hey man, you're really good at what you do, but we can't deal with you no more. We just can't deal with you." They'd show up from the corporate office in Chicago. I wouldn't be at work. They'd send somebody from the plant to my house to get me out of the bed. And I'd wake up as a dude standing by the bed and say, "Yo, man, the people from Chicago's at work. You probably need to come in." And that happened more than once. So anyway, I lost that job on 6/6 of 06. Yeah. And when I walked in the house and I told my wife that day, I said, "I got fired today." She said, "That's okay because you work for the devil anyway." And she told me what the date was. She said it's 6/6/06. You work for the devil anyway. See what I have been doing. While I was running around everything, I was always blaming it on my boss man. But here's the thing. When I was reading that book, and it talks about, I think the first time I really remember reading it, I was in treatment when I read it, but when I read it with Frank, and it talks about, I think it's Bill, where he says, if there is a devil, then he had a hold of me absolute. Boy, it took me right back to that moment when she said that. When I walked through that door and she said, "That's okay, you work for the devil anyway," at 6/6 of 06, I remember thinking that day, if you only knew, I'm the devil. And I knew it. I remember thinking that. And what happened was, from there on, I didn't have a job anymore. Needed a job, didn't have it. Was unemployable. I had to start manipulating, stealing, and conning to float my addiction. So what I did was I cashed in that 401. Back then I'd have said my 401, but what I've learned in here was my family's money. It was supposed to be there for college educations and stuff like that, but I cashed it in. There's another part in that book where Bill Wilson talks about putting together a deal when he was down and out. When I lost that job, there was a company up in Minnesota that I went up to see, and I put a deal together with them. They were going to hire me as a consultant. I wouldn't have to go there. All I had to do was work from home, consult them on a product line similar to what we had. Had the job. He told me what to do. Go home, send us a resume, send us your paperwork. We'll get after it. We're going to start that product. What happened was, just like in that book, very similar, I took that money from that 401, bought some things, went into a building out behind my house. About a month later, the money was gone. I called that fella and said, "Hey, I'm ready to go to work." And he said, "Man, who are you?" He said, "We don't even know you. We ain't heard from you in a month." And it fell apart. So I went through all the money I had access to. And there's a lot of ugly stories in there. I don't want to bore y'all with them, but a lot of ugly stories. I wrecked a lot of cars, hurt a lot of people, hurt my family, scared my boys. In the end, my wife and my boys, I have 2 boys, beautiful wife. In the end, I think they were scared of me. I believe my youngest one, Noah, he wasn't so scared as he was attracted to it. He used to ride around with me whenever I'd go to the dope houses, liquor houses, whatever you want to call them. He'd ride around with me, and he seemed to like every minute of it. He was about 10 back then. I believe if I happened to come in this room, that he'd be a statistic today. I believe I'd have continued to lead him down a road of death, and he would be one of the ones that we all hear about today. Maybe both of them. I don't know. I was sure teaching them I was teaching them the same things my daddy had taught me, and his daddy had taught him, and his daddy had taught him. I was teaching them how they thought was supposed to be a man. Drink, fight, cheat, do whatever you want to do. Just teaching them behaviors that would lead them to death rather than life. So Kurt wanted me to tell a hot water heater story. So here's a good point to tell it. So I had been through all my money, and I had this thing. I'd be so sick if I didn't have what I had to have. And my wife was still working. She's trying to, like my mother, she's trying to raise these two boys in spite of me. And I was trying to get at her money now. A little bit of money she had socked away or stashed away to raise the family. And I was laying on the couch one night. I slept on the couch. It's true. The last 8 years I slept on the couch. Because I couldn't get up and do what I wanted to do if I was in the bed with her. I remember pushing a motorcycle down the driveway, and she'd hear it crank at the bottom of the driveway and know I was gone, but I would push it down the driveway so she couldn't come out the house and try to stop me at the top of the driveway. Just deal with it when I got home. But I was laying there on that couch one night and I was sick, and I needed something really bad. I didn't know how I was going to come up with it. So I got this idea. And I just think it's addiction kind of drove it, but it did it hundreds of times like this. So I went down under the house and I cut off the hot water heater. And I came back upstairs and I laid down on the couch. And my wife got up to go to work. She went in to take a shower. And she come out and said, "Mark, there's something the matter with the hot water heater." I said, "Okay, I'll check it out." I went downstairs under the house and laid on the ground sick for a minute or two, and come back up and told her it's ruined. We're going to have a new one. And she said, "Well, how much is that going to cost?" And I said, "Well, if we get this buddy of mine, he only takes cash." God, something to laugh out at. It's terrible. Hope she don't listen to this. She get mad all over again. But I said it probably cost about $500 to get it installed. And she wrote me a check to me, and she took a cold shower. She went to work. I went downstairs, cut the hot water heater on, went to the bank and went and got high. Now, the rest of that story is, when I come in here, every now and then I'd have a thought about that hot water heater under the house. It's going on about 21 years old. I'm thinking, man, that thing's going to give out before long. And I was about 3 years into recovery. I was already working down at the colony. And I was driving on Millstone Road. A lot of y'all know that road when you go to the colony. In the morning, my phone rang. It was Connie, and she said, "There's something the matter with the hot water heater." And luckily, I had been in here for 3 years. And her right behind that, she said, "There's something the matter with the hot water heater. Did you really replace it?" And everything in me wants to say, "Yeah." I wanted to say something like, the old me come right back, it's like I knew I couldn't trust that dude. He must have given us a used one or something. That's what I want to say, but I didn't. What I said was simply this. I said, "Now you know I didn't." And she said, "Okay, we need a new one then." And all right. And I believe it or not, I got somebody out of the rooms to do it for me. And they replaced the hot water heater. I believe in that moment, though, I could have told a lie. And it could have tore down 3 years of work for her to trust me again. So I remember the other thing about lying. I remember walking out of the back door here one time early in recovery, and I said this pretty loud. I said, "I don't ever have to lie again." And Ryan Mabry was about halfway down this walkway, and he yelled back, "Don't mean you won't." Turned out he's right. Today, though, what I know to do about it is fix it when I inventory it and do what I'm supposed to do. But here's what happened in the end. This is the part that's really ugly for me. Somebody asked me the other day what I missed the most. What did my addiction cost me that I missed the most? And if I'm honest with you, I'm a convicted felon. You lose a lot of privileges when you're a convicted felon. I used to love to shoot and hunt and things like that. That's one of the things I lost that I really hate. I lost through addiction, but I can fix it. I can get it expunged, working on that. But what happened was I started to rack up some charges, and I was stealing, and I didn't really care who it was from. It was usually from employers. I stole from my wife, my family, my kids. I stole any money that was available. When I look at the powerlessness of it, really, that's kind of drives it home for me is that's not me. I wouldn't do that. Something else was doing that, causing me to do that. You know, I remember listening to Tom Ivister tell his story in here one night, on a Saturday night, and he said this. He said, "I'm not a criminal." And in my arrogance, I was about 6 months sober. In my arrogance, I was sitting right back there in the middle, and I thought, well, I am. See, I thought he was talking about he was in a blackout when he did what he did, and he didn't remember. And I was thinking, I wasn't in a blackout when I did everything I did. I remember everything I did. That's kind of the hell of it, I think, of that portion of it is. But what he was really talking about, he wouldn't have done any of it if it hadn't have been for the disease of alcoholism. And I get that today as I continue to learn and grow in here. So what happened was I went to jail for the last time, and I called home and started to lie. Y'all know what the story is. She said, "I know. No, you ain't lying to me no more." She said, "I done called the magistrate. I know what's up." And, I'm in the middle of this jail, you know, and I don't even care, but here's what she said. I've left out a lot, but I want y'all, we started dating when she was in high school. She is the love of my life. And I met her when I was running another business. When she came in the room, believe it or not, some people won't, but I knew in my heart that's who I wanted to be with the rest of my life. And she was an innocent little girl. And by the end of it, I told you I made her so hard that she couldn't even cry when I yelled vulgarities at her and things like that. And so there's in a personal story in the big book, one way they define a bottom, and one of those personal stories, I can't tell you which one, but I read it and I've seen it when I need to see it. And it defines the bottom as the next thing you're about to lose or the last thing you lost being more important than the drugs or the alcohol. And that's where I was standing, at a bottom in jail with my wife I love so much telling me I'm filing for separation tomorrow, and in a year we're going to get a divorce. We'll see what you do about your problem in a year. And I started to cry in jail, you know, it just destroyed me. And what happened was I come out, I couldn't go home. I come out on house arrest, went to my mom's, and my mom had Alzheimer's, but I went there, my brother was there, and both of them are dead now, my brother and my mom that I stayed with there. And I called a girl by the name of Becky. She still helps a lot of guys that are in the rooms now, and I told her, I said, "Becky, I actually have grown up with her in that church I was talking about, and I went to school with her. And years before that, in high school, she had turned me in for skipping class. Now I'm calling her to ask for help." So that helped a little bit with ego, you know. But I told her, I said, "Becky, I need to go away for a year." And the only reason I said a year is because that's what my wife had said to me was a year. And she said, "Mark, you don't need to go nowhere for a year. You just need to go down to Rockingham for 28 days and do whatever they tell you to do." So that's what I did. But I was so sick coming off of methadone there at the end, and I was so sick. I was at my mom's and couldn't sleep. If you know the feeling, you know the feeling. It's just anyway. I call it torture. But I begged my brother. I said, his name was Lee, and I said, "Lee, man, you got to go get me something to drink. I'm not gonna make it." And he went out and got me a 6-pack of Michelob Light. Anyway, so I drank it, And I believe it made it worse. And, I do. I went down to the treatment center and I detoxed there. Man, I thought about leaving that place so many times. I had some really good guys down there. Robert, a lot of people know Robert. He's one of them. I remember people saying things like, you got to do this for you. You can't do this for anybody else. And I was thinking, if I'm going to do this for me, I'm about to leave and go get high because I'm sick as a dog. And Robert said, I told him one day, I said, look here, I ain't doing this for me. I'm doing this for my wife and boys. And he said, well, ain't that for you? And that made sense to me. Yeah. Just little things like that, you know. While I was down there, she's sending me letters saying, finally got some peace because you ain't around. And don't want you to come home because don't want the boys to get used to you being home again because you're going to prison. And I don't want them to have to go deal with you leaving again. She was sending me letters about all the people that were showing up saying I owed them money. And I was sharing all those letters with Robert. And so he knew I had a good house, a good wife, 2 good boys, safe place. And she was telling me, you ain't coming home. And I told him I wanted him to put me on the list for the halfway house down here at Bethesda. And he wouldn't do it. He said, I'm not going to do it. And I asked him why. And he said, Mark, if you go down there, you and her are going to grow further apart. And I said, well, she won't let me come home. He said, well, I'm not putting you on that list. And I got towards the end of treatment, and I asked Harold, I said, Harold, Robert won't put me on the list for the halfway house. Of course, he knew. He said, I know. And I said, my wife won't let me come home. And he said, oh, yeah? And I said, yeah, can I stay here another 28 days? And he said, for another $2,800, you can. That's a true story. I can tell you right where we were standing. And I was thinking, I ain't paid the first $2,800. I didn't have no money to get in down there, and that's a big deal. When you're where I was, I might have been able to scramble up $100 or so from my brother or something. But if it had cost $500 to go there, I wouldn't have been able to go there. I remember asking Robert on the phone, what about money? He said, I ain't said nothing about money, have I? He started telling me what to do. So anyway, the Sunday before I was supposed to go on Monday, we had church, and I was getting promoted, and Harold said he was grateful that Mark was willing to stay another 28 days. So I leaned over to my wife, and I said, I'm going to stay. And she leaned back over to me and said, we'll talk about it. And after church, we went out in the parking lot, and she said her and the boys had been talking about it, and they want me to come on home. So I had an opening, and I knew it. I seen it clearly. I got a chance at this life I threw away. One more shot. And I had met Frank before that, and I didn't care for him. That's a nice way of saying it. But I asked Robert, I said, Robert, what do I do about a sponsor in Aberdeen? And he told me that somebody was coming down there for Tuesday night meetings. A bunch of guys would come down there from here. He said, you should talk to him about it. And I said, you talking about Frank, ain't you? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I don't like him. Just like that. And he said, Robert, just calm, nice as he can be, calm. I said, well, you don't have to. And let it go like that. And that's what I did was I was supposed to leave on Monday. I stayed one more night so I could pick up my 30-day chip at the colony on Tuesday night. And he come down and asked him to be my sponsor. And, there's a lot of things that had a lot of impact in my life, and I'm sure you've had moments like that where you can go back to them and you can remember them just like it was yesterday. And I can remember what he told me. He said what everybody else said. He asked me 2 questions. Asked me, was I really licked? And was I willing to go to any length for victory over alcohol? And I started to answer, and he said, don't answer now. He said, I want you to answer later. At least that's what I heard. And he walked out into the chapel where they had the meeting. And I walked out there and I sat down across from him and I said, when am I supposed to answer these questions? And he said this, he said, you already did. And he'd be my sponsor. And then he told me some things. He said, man, that was a lot of hope. A man willing to take me under his wing and show me the way, And I knew I needed help. And he told me some things. He said, when you have a thought of drinking or drugging, he does sound like that. He said, I want you to pray this prayer. This first thing he told me. I want you to ask God to remove the obsession so you can be of service to him and others. And I did it. And then he taught me how to do a gratitude list. We didn't do gratitude lists in treatment back then. He taught me how to do a gratitude list. And he started to walk me through that book. And I don't know what we was doing to begin with. He was reading. But I know I was doing it. And I remember sitting right there where Daniel was sitting. No, he was sitting there and I was sitting where Frank sat. And I looked across the table at him and I asked him this. I said, what are my chances? And he said this to me. He said, you just like me. You want to know. And I said, I do. And he said, well, I've sponsored hundreds of guys. And he said, if you'll do what he said, the ones that done what I'm going to tell you to do, never drink again. And I remember thinking, sitting there, I don't understand none of this. I don't really get it, but I can do what I'm told. And I'm about to do what I'm told. And I started doing what I was told. Best I can sometimes. I remember times like, he'd forget me. I'd be sitting there and see, he normally, I'll tell you this little story real quick. A lot of guys remember this fella, and he's an important guy in my sobriety. He's not alive anymore, but his name was Charlie Stilwell. So a lot of people remember him in here. He's a good fella. Frank was reading with guys on Sunday morning, and Frank said that's when we'd read, and said I wanted to go down to the colony with my family for church. And I told Charlie out back, I said, I'm going to have to find me another sponsor. Because I'm going to go to church with my family down at the colony. And I reckon, I don't know, but I'd have to find out from Frank later, I guess, unless you want to tell me now. I reckon Charlie talked to him. Because when I talked to Frank, Frank said, well, we'll read on Wednesday nights so you can go to church with your family on Sunday. Now, the reason I told you that is every now and then on Wednesday night, because he wanted to know him, I think he forgot me. And I'd be sitting there, and he won't there. And, not much, but just enough to slow me down. Because I wanted to go so fast and get it so quick, just enough to slow me down, I think. But here's what I realize about that now. The most important thing was I was there. I was sitting there. I'm willing to do what I was told. He walked me through that book. I remember we got up to about the 10th step. A lot of people in here helped me. They said, I'm telling you. Chuck, Richard, I remember being so mad in here one night. I come out of here and asked Richard what to do, and he told me to pray for him, boy. And I kept hearing that, but I did it. I did what I was told, even though sometimes I didn't believe it would work. Frank told me early on, I remember we were walking out that door to do step work, to read one night in the Al-Anon room, and he said, you got 3 people you don't like. And I was thinking, does hate work? Can I hate them? And he asked me to tell them their names, and I prayed for those 3 people this morning. Over 12 years later, I prayed for them every morning. I made amends to all of them. I called him up later in life and said, look, I finally made my last amends. Do I still pray for him? He said, you do what you want. He said, but I do. So I just keep praying for him. Why not? Pray for him to have everything I want in life. So we're doing the step work. We're going through the book. I'd already done one inventory down at the colony, best of my ability, but when I did it with him, I went a little deeper. Now I knew what I was doing, and I could really analyze myself at a deeper level. I started to realize things like the resentment from my father, wasn't about my father at all. It was about me. And my fear that I couldn't be different than him. That I got his genes. Maybe I'm just like him. I looked at things like my resentment for Chuck. And what I come up with there is I was jealous. I was afraid I couldn't never get the years of sobriety he had. That's tough, man, when you got to take a look at that stuff. But I learned a lot from it. You know? You don't mind me saying that, do you, Chuck? Richard, you mind if I talk about yours? Richard would sit over there and he'd tell his really important story about having a spiritual experience. And I was jealous that I'd never had one of those. Or maybe scared that I had to have one and I hadn't had one. And there was this fellow who used to come in here in the morning. His name was Ray. He's an old guy. I don't know how old he is now. He was up there back then, but I'd come out share. Every morning I'd come, I'd make coffee, he'd be here, and we'd have that meeting everybody talks about before the meeting. And I asked him about a spiritual experience one day. I said, Ray, why do you reckon God come to some people suddenly and they feel his presence and they know he's there in the room with them? And he didn't me. And he said, just matter of fact, he said, they must have needed it. Maybe you don't. That made sense to me. I'm glad I talked to him. And then I heard Richard share later how he ended up using again. I had my own experience. I just didn't realize it. Now I can look back and see it. I could see where God was operating in my life the whole time. I just never could see it because I didn't know what I was looking for. I learned what I was looking for in here. Now I can look at it and see it on a daily basis. I just didn't know what to look. And the more I practice looking for it, the more I see it. So anyway, we worked through the steps, did the best I could. I realized, when I did my fifth step, Frank, I did it sitting right there with Greg and Chuck were sitting. We were sitting right there, and it was, I think it was a Sunday afternoon. I talked about it some. I realized that Frank was laying his life aside to sit there and do that with me. And I was familiar with a scripture that said, "No greater friend than a friend that lay his life down." And I realized in that moment it didn't have to die. He just laid his life down for a while so I could live. And a lot of men have done that for me in this room. They take their time to give me a moment and help me deal with a situation that's bothering me or could knock me off track, nudge me back on track. A lot of text in the morning, a lot of love. I'm working on this love and tolerance thing. I need help with it. Harold told me one day, I remember this, he sat down with me, he said, "Mark, you're good at what you do." He said, "I'm in a treatment center." He said, "But have you ever thought about being a little nicer?" And in that moment, what I heard was, "You're no good." That's just not true. That's what my mind tells me. It's not what he said at all. He said, "You're really good at what you do. Won't you try being a little nicer when you do it?" So I'm trying to practice that. I've said it in here before. Truth hurts bad enough. You don't have to yell it at somebody. Most of the time they already know it. You just have to remind them of it. So we went through there, and I remember we're back there in the little coffee room, and Frank told me, he said, "You need to share more." And I said, "Well, I already shared a lot. I felt like everybody's tired of hearing me." And he said, "Well, you need to share more." And I said, "Well, I feel like I'm repeating myself." He said, "Well, that's what we do." And what he was trying to tell me was, I need to attract. He told me when somebody asked me to sponsor him, then to ask him the two questions, what to do. What he was telling me was, I know that you need to attract somebody. You need to be working with somebody. And in order for them to know that, you need to talk about it. Your experience, share your experience, so people ask you to sponsor them. And I still do that. I still sponsor people in the book. I've got a couple in the book right now. I've gone times where I didn't have people in the book, and I prayed about 12-step work, and then I ended up going on a few old-timey 12-step calls with guys. It's just, I don't know. I'm not. If I'm not working with somebody in Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm not in good shape. I'll just say it like that. I'm just not. I want to be working with somebody. I love to read the book with them. I love to learn from each other. The fact is, the more I go through the book, the more I learn about it. I study the book. I love the book. Let me tell you, get a couple more minutes here, and I'm gonna hope y'all got some of that. Time flies. An hour ain't long to talk about you just completely building a life, completely destroying it, and then building it back. You know what I'm saying? So if I miss something, I'm sorry. But it ain't long, especially when you're 57. I've had a few years at it, but let me tell you this. I have a lot of respect for a guy by the name of Pat H. And anything I've said up here tonight about because I've learned it from somebody. I learned a lot from him. And he told me one time, I heard him say this, and boy, I mean it when I say it tonight. He said, I've had the best 12 years of my life. I'm talking about me now. He's talking about him. Because I hadn't had to hurt anybody I love anymore. Boy, the last 8 years of my active addiction, I hurt everybody I loved, even though I didn't want to. In the end, I wanted to be a good daddy. I wanted to be a good husband. I wanted to provide. I wanted to be useful, but I was useless. And I knew it. And not only was I not helping them, I was hurting them. And today, I'm useful. I get to help them. You couldn't even measure my credit when I come in this building. I'm not even sure how to measurement for it. I don't know how low it goes, but I was below that. And now, I can, I've got a son that just got married, baby. If they need something, I can get it. I can do whatever I need to do. Nothing I'd rather do. I talked about it in here before. He had a problem. His dog got hurt. And, he's trying to get his life started. And I said, don't worry about it. Lay the credit card down and say, take care of the dog. Nothing I would rather do than do that for my people and my family. Good news on my side is I left the house. My wife's there. She's a little sick, but she's there, and I'm allowed to come back tonight. And I'll be sleeping in the same bed with her tonight. And I can get up every day. I can get up and take that for granted. All I have to do is remember laying in that bed, a single bed down there at the treatment center, wishing I was home so bad. And you know what'll help me remember that? My gratitude list. It keeps me there. It reminds me of what I have that I wanted so bad back then, but I couldn't seem to keep it. My life is better than it's ever been. I have great relationships. All my relationships have improved in life, just what the book said they will. If I continue, one of the things I don't like to do is my inventory like I should, but I do them, and I learn from them, and if I continue to do what it says, if I do what 10:11 says, one thing for sure, I can't help but change. And as I change, my relationships improve. Grateful for this room. I'm grateful for everybody here. I hope somebody got something out of that, and thanks for letting me share.